Hey, what's going on guys? Welcome back to another video. So in this video, we will learn about unit testing in React application by using React testing library to test our React components and Jest as a test runner. This will be a beginner friendly tutorial. So we will be first understanding what React testing library is, some rules and how Jest is associated with it. And after that, we are going to write the unit test cases for our React login application. So if this sounds interesting, then stick around. Also, don't forget to subscribe the channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the videos like this one. So let's get started. As we all know, software developer role is the most trending role among young graduates and it's highly rewarding in terms of pay. Yet only a few graduates manage to become software developers, and the reason is not all students get the right skills during their education journey. So I'm going to tell you about a program that will solve this problem for you. The only thing you need to do is get ready to learn, practice and work hard with AccioJob, which is founded by 4 IIT Delhi alumni, where they train graduates and final year students for 6 months on a full stack development and get them placed in software developer roles. I have reviewed their mentors' LinkedIn profile who are from the top tech colleges and companies, and they teach the most trending industry skills. Students get to learn data structures and algorithm, JavaScript, HTML and CSS, React.js, Redux.js, Node.js, REST APIs, Express.js, MongoDB, SQL. AccioJob students also get to practice and learn to code through their live projects and assignments. And the best part is AccioJob takes fees once the students start receiving their salary, and that too if a student gets a CTC of more than 5 lakhs per annum. That means student gets 100% job guarantee. So far, the highest CTC that the student has got is 41 lakhs per annum, and the average CTC of AccioJob students is 8.3 lakhs per annum. The other thing is they have the minimum fees and the lowest payback period of 12 months when compared with any other pay after placement program. The monthly installments comes to 10,000 only if a student gets a CTC between 5 to 10 lakhs per annum. 15,000 monthly installment for a CTC of 10 to 18 lakh per annum, and 20,000 monthly installments for the student gets 18 lakh per annum or above CTC. The most fantastic news for female software engineer aspirants is that AccioJob has announced that they will bear 25,000 for any girl who joins their program to promote women in tech. What are you waiting for? You can take your first step towards building a tech career by going to the AccioJob's website from the link in the description of the video. Alright guys, so I already bootstrapped my React application, and let me give you a quick walkthrough of it. I have created a login application, so the code for the login application is already written. So I will go to the source folder, and inside the source folder you will see that we have the app.js, and in the app.js we have a login component which is imported, and we are just using the bootstrap components. So for the row we have this h1 header, as this is a React testing tutorial, and then for the other column we have the login component. And if we go to the components folder, then this is our login component. So if I close this, and we will see that this is the login component which I have written, and all the components which I am using are coming from the React bootstrap, and I'm already running my application on the local host. So if I go here and I will show you, then this is how the application looks like. Now the functionality which we have built in this application is that whenever I click on the submit with the empty form, I will get an error that email ID is not valid. Now what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to add an email. So I will add a wrong email ID, and then I'm going to have a password. All right, and then I'm going to click on this submit, and in this case also you will see that the email is not valid. Now let me enter a valid email address, and now I'm going to click on the submit. We are just assuming that login has happened successfully, and we see the email address. Now what I want is I want to reset my form, so I'm going to click on the reset, and this is going to reset my form, and we are going to test this login component with the rendering using the React testing library. So let's go back, and what we are going to do here is the first thing is if we go to our app test.js, then there are some tests already written return. So you will see that we have a render imported and a screen imported, and these two imports are coming from the testing library React. So does that mean that whenever we want to use the React testing library in our project, do we have to install some dependencies? So the answer will be no, we don't have to install any external dependencies, because when we bootstrap the React application, with this bootstrap we already get the testing library Jest DOM, the testing library React, and the user event. So these are by default embedded in the dependencies for your create React app. So that's why we don't have to install any external dependencies to use the React testing library and Jest DOM. Now before we write any test cases, we first have to understand what is the purpose of this React testing library, and there are certain rules that we should follow, and to write what type of test cases we should use the React testing library. So let's go back, and I'm going to go to the React testing library official documentation, and here you will see the introduction. So the problem we want to do is we want to test all the renderings that are happening on the browser, or whatever the changes a user is able to see on the browser, and we want to test all those changes. And the solution for that is React testing library offers us a DOM testing library, which is a document object model. So you have an access to the DOM elements, and based on that, when you find the DOM elements on the page, you can actually assert them, and that's how you will test the component rendering on the browser. And what actually the misconception about the React testing library is that it is not a test runner or a framework. So for the test runner, it is already associated with the Jest DOM. So Jest DOM is a test runner, and what do you mean by a test runner is that whenever you fire npm test, it will go and search for all the files that are associated with test.js, and then it's going to run all the tests and prepare the report for you, which tests are passed and which tests are failed. Now the next thing we need to understand is that what should we avoid with testing libraries. So when we are using the React testing library, we should avoid testing the implementation details or the implementation logic, and for that we should always avoid the internal state of the component. We should avoid how the lifecycle methods of the component changes, the child components, or any of the internal method. We are only going to test for the DOM elements which are rendered on the screen, and there are certain guidelines that we should follow. So if I click on this guidelines rule and you just read these guidelines, that will help you to understand the purpose of using the React testing library to write your unit test cases if you want to test your React components rendering on the browser from the user's perspective. Now this was more kind of a theoretical stuff which I wanted to show you before we start writing the test cases, because it's important to understand the purpose, what you are trying to test and what you are expecting from your test cases. And I have seen that many people gets confused between these test cases and which one to use. I mean, should they use the React testing library, or they have the Jest, or what is the enzyme? So you can use the enzyme along with the React testing library if you actually want to test your logic, your states. So in this tutorial, we are not going to test any logic. We are mostly going to test about the rendering of a component on the browser from a user's perspective. So let's go back to our application, and in our application, if we see, then here this is how we run our test cases. So we just have to write npm test, and it will in the background run the React scripts for the test, and then the Jest, which is a test runner, will find all the files which have a naming convention of test.js. So what I'm going to do here is that first let's go to this app test, and in this app test what I will do is I will go to the terminal, and then I'm simply going to fire npm test, and I will see that what actually happens. So I'm going to hit enter. So we can see that our test is failed, and now if we scroll up, then we will see that why exactly the test has failed. So here we can see that we were trying to render learn React link on the document, and if we see here, then it's unable to find the element. And if we go to the browser to check that, then we see that here we don't have anything related to the learn React. So how we can make this test as pass? So what we will do is let's go to this app.js, and in this app.js we will see that we have a text, but the text is this is a React testing tutorial. So I'm going to go here and I will make some changes. So let's go here, and here what I will do here is instead of rendering the learn React link, what I will do is I will have a header renders with React testing tutorial in the document. So this is what I'm trying to test. Now what I will do here is that instead of this, what I will test here, I need that this is React testing tutorial. All right, and now if I save it, then we should be able to see that the test case is now passed. Now what we can do here is we can actually write more test cases, and the other test case which I feel is that whenever my app.js is rendered, I also want to see that my child component, which is a login, it should also render. So for that, what we can do here is I'm going to write a new test. So let me have a new test, and in this new test I'm going to have the render login component in the document. All right. And for this, what we can do here is that we are going to first render the application. So I'm going to have a constant, and this constant will be the component. I will name it as a component, and then I want to render my app component. So to render the app component, we can simply use this. All right. And before we do anything with the component, I want to console log this component, and I want to show you that what actually is present on this component. So let's have a component here. All right. I'm going to save it, and here we are going to see a long list of things which are present on the component. So if I scroll up, you will see the console log, and on this console log we have the React root container, and there's a tons of properties and methods you will see. So if I scroll down, then you will see that what all things you can use on this component. You can find all by a label text, you can find by label text, get all by label text, and there's a lot of method which you can explore. So what I'm going to do here is that now I'm going to remove this console log, and what I want is I want to find my child component which is rendered on the document or not. So I will have my child element first. So let me grab the child element, and how I can grab the child element as, so I have this component, so I'm going to use this component. Now what I want to fetch is that if we go to our browser, then we see that if we want to understand that our child component is present on the browser or not, so in this case, I will just pick any of the stuff from my child component, and I will just check that whether it's on the document or not. So we can do one thing, we can either pick this text and we can check, or we can also pick this label. So I'm going to pick the label. So I'm going to do a dot get, and here you will see that there's a tons of methods. So I'm going to do a get by label text, and the label which I'm going to use is email. So I'm going to copy this email, and let's me add the email here. All right. So now I have also have fetched the child element, and now I just want to do the assertion, so that based on the assertion, it will be validated that yes, the particular element is present on the DOM. So I'm going to have the expect, and what I expect is I expect this child element to be on the document. So I'm going to have the to be in the document. All right. And now if I save it, then you will see that both our test cases are now passed. That means our child component is rendered in our app component. Or we can also make this as to be truthy, because we want this to become a true. So that will also pass our test. Now why we are actually writing this test is that suppose if someone comes and he just remove this, or he just actually comment this out for some reason. And now in this case, if we try to run our test cases, then you will see that the test case is now failed because it doesn't find my child component on the browser. So that's where the unit test cases actually helps to identify the bugs whenever a developer makes some changes in the code. So let me revert this. All right. And we can also do one more thing in this. Instead of writing this component and dot this, what I can do here is that I actually can destructure get by label text. Okay. And I will save it, and it will still work. So this is how we write the unit test cases. Now let's try to test our login component. So in our app component, if we see, then we have already tested that this h1 header is present on the document. We have also verified that the login component is rendered as a child component in our app.js. Now let's go in the login.js and let's try to test the login component. So if we go to the login component, then we see that first we have functions like handle submit, which is when we write all the details in the form and then we submit it, we are going to have this function call, which is a handle submit. Then another one is the reset form. So when we click on the reset button, it is going to reset the form. Then we have the alerts. Whenever we successfully submit the form, we have this show user, which actually shows the email address of the user. Then we have the error block. So whenever there is an error, this alert is displayed, the error messages. And then we have a form where we have a input for the email address, and we have a form where we have the password, and then we have a submit button and a reset button. And in the end, we have a function exported, which is to validate the email. So whenever you pass an email address, it's going to validate. If the email address is a valid email, it's going to return true, otherwise it's going to return the false. So in order to write the test cases for our login component, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to name the folder as underscore underscore test underscore underscore. All right. And this naming convention is actually configured in our Jest. So Jest will find all the files which are in the underscore underscore test underscore underscore, and then it will run all those test cases. So I'm going to create a new file here, and I'm going to name it as login test.js. So the first thing we will do is we will simply going to import our render. So let me have the render, and I will also import the screen. All right. So far we have only used the render function. We haven't used the screen. So now I'm going to show you what the screen is. And this will be coming from the @testing React. All right. So now we have this, and then we also import the login component as we are going to test the login component. All right. Now we see that we have one test failed, and that is because that we have created a test.js for the login, but we don't have any test in it. So if we scroll up, then you will see that your test suite must contain at least one test. Now what this test suite is, so what we will do here is I'm going to create a test suite. So you can create it with describe. So let me have a describe, and in the describe, what I'm going to write is I'm going to write test the login component. All right, so we are going to test our login component, and then I'm going to have an arrow function. All right, and now inside this I'm going to write multiple tests. So let's have our first test, and our first test will be we need to render the form submit button on the screen. So what we are going to write here is that we are going to render the login form with two buttons. So we are going to see that our login form has two buttons or not. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have an arrow function, and here we are going to first have the render. So I'm going to render my login component. All right. And now I want to fetch the buttons list because I'm going to test that login form has two buttons or not. So I'm going to have a constant. I'm going to write a button list, and this button list will be equals to. So what we can do here is that since we can directly use the screen, so on the screen also we have all the functions. So I'm going to have find all because I want to find all the buttons. So I will have all by, and I'm going to find by role. So I need to find all the buttons which has a role as button. All right. And then what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to do an expect button list, and this button list should have a length of 2 because we have two buttons on our screen. So I'm going to have the length, and this length will be 2. All right, I'm going to save it, and let's see what happens. And we will see that now our test is failed. So what we have to do actually is if we go scroll up, then we see that we have received a type of object. So we are trying to match the empty with an object. So in this case, what we can do here is actually we can try to do a console log of the button list so that we know what is the problem. So I'm going to do a console log, and we are going to do a button list. All right, I will save it. And then we can see that what is printed in the button list. So if we scroll, then we see that it's a promise is returned. So what we can do is to handle the promise, we can use the async, and then we can make a await here. All right. And now if I remove this, and now let's give a try. So I'm going to save it. And now we will see that our test case is passed. Since it was find all by role is returning a promise, that's why I use the async and await. Now another thing you will notice here that we are getting this warning, and this warning is that React DOM.render is no longer supported in React 18. And to get rid of this warning, what we can do is we can go to the GitHub of the React testing library. We will just scroll down, and here you will see that they have added a code that this is just a little hack in order to get rid of the warning. So I'm going to copy this. So let me copy this, and I will add it in my setup test.js. All right, I will save it. And here what I will do is I'm going to just change this text. So I will change this text with this one. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to add it here. All right, I will save it. And now you will see that we don't have the warning. All right. So now let's go back. So we have added that hack, and now let's go back. And here we see that now we also render the login form with two buttons. So this test is also passing. Now the next what I want to test is that I want to check my email validation. So for that I can write one more test here. So what I will do is I'm going to have a test, and here is should failed on email validation. So I want that it should fail on the email validation. And then I'm going to have arrow function. So let me have the arrow function, and inside this what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have a constant with a test email, and I'm going to have this email as thepage.com. All right, I want that this should get failed as whenever I validate my email address. Now, in order to do that, I have to pass this in my validate email function. So what I can do here is I can import. So I will go here and I will import the validate email. All right. And then I can do here that expect whenever I make use of a validate email, and then I pass an email that in that case it should not to be true, because we know that this email is not a valid email. That's why we are just testing it that not to be true. So I'm going to save it, and you will see that we have another test case as passed. And if I make a false here, then in that case you will see that it's failing. Or what we can actually do here is that if I pass a valid email, so I'm going to have a the page at the rate gmail.com, and if I save it, then you will see that in this case also it will fail, because now in this case if I have to remove this not because it's a true, and if I save it, then it's going to pass. So that's how you actually test your application. So I'm going to change this back, because what I was testing is that this test should fail on email validation. So I'm going to pass a false value, and then I'm going to have a not dot be true. All right, the another test which I can do is that my email input should only accept the email. So this is the email input, and this should only accept the email, which is the type of email, and it should not accept any text. So what I can do here is that I'm going to write a test, and here I can have email input field should accept email. All right, and then I'm going to have an arrow function, and to check that what I will do is I'm going to first render my login. So let me render the login. All right, we can also do one more thing. I mean, we can also write here before each test we have to render the login, so that can also be possible, but for now I will just continue with this. And here I'm going to have a constant. I'm going to write the email. I'm going to use the screen dot, and this time what I want to do is I want to fetch the DOM element with the help of another method, which is the get by placeholder text. So if I go here and if I see the placeholder is the enter email, so I'm going to copy this and I'm going to add it here. All right, so now I have fetched my email element, and then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make use of a user event. So now I want that the user should type his email address. So for that we can make use of a user event. So user event is now imported, and when a user is typing, so let me have the type, and he is typing in this email. So let me have the email, and then what I want to type is I'm going to type as the page. All right, and in this case what I want is that my email should not match, because this is a text and not an email address. So let's have an expect email dot value to be, or we can also use to match. So let me have the to match, and I'm going to match this with the page at the rate gmail.com. All right, because email field should only accept the email addresses. So now if I run this, then we should have a failure here, because what we have done is here we have added the page, here we are matching with the page at the rate gmail.com. So here what I don't want this to be accepted. So what I will do is I'm going to write not to match. All right, and now you will see that this test is now passing. Another test case which I feel we can do is that the password should always have an type of password, because we are using a password, so we have to verify that the type of the password is also a password. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to have a test, and then I'm going to have password input should have type as password. All right, and then I'm going to have a arrow function. Okay, what we can do here is that we can make a small change in our package JSON, and in the package JSON what I'm going to do here is that I'm simply going to add hyphen verbose. All right, and in this way when now I run my test cases, it's going to tell me my description of the test suite and all the tests inside that test suite. So I'm going to save it. Okay, so now I will just do a rerun of it, and now I'm going to clear, and now I'm going to have the npm test. All right, and now you will see that if we scroll, then you will see that for the tests which are passed in the app test is header renders with React testing tutorial. And here we will see that all the tests in my test suite. All right. So this is happened with the help of hyphen verbose. All right, so now let's go back, and what we were testing is that password input should always have a type of password. So what we can do here is, so let's render the login. So I'm going to render the login, and then what I want is I want my password. So I'm going to copy this. All right, since the test cases are always, you will feel that it's a very kind of a repetitive, but yes, that's how that we write the test cases. So I'm going to write here as password, and this will also change to the password, since I will go here and I will see that this is the password. So I'm going to copy and I'm going to add it here. All right, so now we have it, and now how we are going to assert is I'm going to have the expect, and what I expect is this password to have, so I'm going to use to have attribute, so we can use this. And what attribute we are trying to test is we want that the type of this password should be a password. So I'm going to have a password. All right, so sorry, this should not be a colon, this should be a comma. All right, so now if I go and change here, if someone comes as a developer and he changes this to a text, and if we try to save it, then you will see that the test case will start failing. And this will be because that the type is a password which is expected, but we have received a type as text. So let me change this to password. All right, now what I want to test is that whenever I click on the reset button, my input fields should be emptied. So if a user comes to the browser and he types something, and then in the end he clicks on the reset button, everything should get reset. And how I'm going to test that? So let's write a test case for that. So I will have a test. All right, and I will have should be able to submit, should be able to reset the form. All right, we want to reset our form. What I will do here is that first I will have a constant, and then I'm going to get by label text, and I also want get by test ID, and these two will be coming from the render. So I'm going to render the login. So these are just the different way of writing the same thing, and we have already used the label text, but we are using this get by test ID first time. So what I'm going to do here is that I will have a constant. I'm going to have my reset button. So let's fetch the reset button, and I'm going to fetch it by the test ID. All right, and I need to provide an ID here. So if I go back to my login.js, and this is the button, and here you will see that I have added an attribute which is the data test ID, and the name is reset. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to use it here. All right, now I have the reset, and now what I'm going to do here is that I need to fetch my email input and the password input. So I'm going to use the same. So let me copy this and I'm going to add it here. Let me copy this and I'm going to add it here. All right, I'm going to change this to email input. I'm going to change this to password input. Let's have a node here. So this will become node, and then I will not use this get by label because I'm using get by placeholder. All right, so now I have the input, and what I'm going to do next is I'm going to make use of a fire event. So that means whenever a user click on the reset button, so I'm going to make use of a fire event. All right, and the fire event will be a click event, and this event is happening on a reset button. So now you must be confused that what is the user event and what is the fire event. So they both work exactly the same, but whenever you make use of a user event, which is this one, user event dot click, in this case, in the background, it's going to fire the fire event. So that's why it's just a top of a layer on a fire event. So we can also use this fire event. And whenever I fire an event, what I am expecting is I am expecting that my input email node dot value to match as empty, because in that case the value will be empty. So if I go back here and if we see that we are doing the empty, so that means whenever we are going to click on the reset, I need my input value and the password value to be empty. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to change this to all right. So now you will see that one or more test case we have passed. So these all are the tests we are writing. Now I have two more test cases to show you here. The one will be the submit, whenever you have a successful submit of your form. So let's copy this so that we don't waste much time. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to add it here, and what I'm going to do here is that should be able to submit the form. All right, so now I have the login as a rendered login. All right, and then we also need the button. So if I go here and we see the button ID, so this is the test and we can use this button ID as submit. So I'm going to change this to submit, and now this will become submit button. All right, and what I'm going to do here is that now we have the input node, we have the password, we also have the submit button. Now we are going to fire the user event, and user is first, he's going to type the email address. So I'm going to copy this, I'm going to add it, and here I'm going to have the email as depeche@gmail.com. all right, then I'm going to have my password. So let's add the password. So I'm going to copy this, I'm going to add it here, and now this I'm going to change this to 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. All right, so now user have also entered the password, and now we need to just fire the submit button. So I'm going to have the user event dot, and I'm going to have the click, and this is the submit button. So let's have the submit button. All right, so now user have submitted it, and what I want to test is that whenever a user is successfully able to submit the form, I need to see an alert box which will have the email address. So if we go back here and we have this 1 2 3 4 5, and user is successfully able to submit, I want to see the email address which is printed on the screen, and that's how I will be able to test that the form is successfully submitted. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have a constant, and I will have the user info. So I will have the user info, and this user info will be screen dot get by text. All right, and which text I am looking for. So if I go here, then I'm looking for this text. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to add the text here. All right, and now I can actually do a validate. So I will just want to see that this user info is present in the document or not. If it's present, then my test case will pass. So I will have the expect user to be in the document. All right, and I will save it. Okay, so we see that the test is failed, and if we go, then we see that this is not defined, and that may be because okay, so we need to add screen here. So let me add screen dot. All right, I will save it, and we see that the test is still failing, and that is because we are trying to search for this on the screen, but we have this on the screen. So that's why I will just have to remove this. Okay, and now we see that one more error, and that is we made one more mistake. User is not defined. Oops, I'm sorry. So this will become the user info. All right, and now we should be able to see that the test is passed. So this is how we are going to test the successful submission of the form. Now what we need to test a last thing, that in case of an error, we should be able to see an error message. So I'm going to copy this, so it will be very similar. So let me copy this. All right, and then I will go here and I'm going to add it. I'll just minimize this. And what we need to do here is that we have to should be able to let's remove this, should display error if incorrect email address. All right, so in this case also we are going to have a submit, because we are going to submit the form. We're going to take the email, we are going to take the password, and then user is going to type an incorrect email address. This is the password, and then user is going to click on the submit. And in this case, whenever a user submits an incorrect email address, so let's give a try. I'm going to reset. User is submitting an incorrect email address, and I'm going to click on submit. And in this case, we see a text that is email is not valid. So what we are going to do here is that we are going to check for this. All right, and this will be the error message. And we just have to find that is the error message on the document or not, and we will see that our test case is now passed. So if we make any change here, so let's give a try, and I'm gonna, what I will do is I will change that email address is not valid, and if I save it, then you will see that the test case will start failing. So that's why we are going to write the test case, and we are going to see all the tests which from a user's perspective, that what a user will see when a successful form is submitted, or what a user will see when a form has a incorrect email address. So if I scroll up, then we see that we have written these much test cases for the login component, and this we have used the React testing library using the Jest as a test runner and Jest DOM. So that's all I have in this video. I hope you liked the video. and you understand React testing library very well now, and you will be able to use the React testing library to test your components from a user's point of view. So that's all I have in this video. I hope you liked the video. A thumbs up is appreciated. You can also connect with me via Facebook or Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter for latest updates. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe the channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the videos like this one. Thank you. Thanks for watching.